Hey guys, it's Robbo Denaz and welcome to the GWENT news. Because of his trip to Warsaw he couldn't host the podcast, so has used my services. Without further ado, let's get into the news. In this week's episode we will talk a lot about stuff that has happened in the Challenger, and obviously we will see some memes. For this week's guests we have Weissenberg talking about Merchants of Novigrad podcast and Babyjosus with his deck guide on Detlef deck. The Challenger had an unexpected winner, Magpie, who has played really good throughout the tournament but certainly with at least a bit of luck. This was his victory dance. For anyone interested, down in the description you can find the important stats from the Challenger. Leaked footage of GWENT mobile played outside has been leaked. You now surely know that the Iron Judgment update is coming and that armor is being introduced to GWENT again. With the armor back, the triple card arts are also back. And for those wondering, Bleeding Ghost Trough armor. Amazing card Kriegerism has been released and GWENT cards never looked hotter. And also Martyr. For anyone who is looking for a nice background, here is one sizzling hot boy. This is how it feels to see rid of it back. The two faces of Magpie. And for the end we have an old meme making its comeback. This is for the news, and now let's get to Weissenberg's.
Hello everyone, how are you guys doing? My name is Weissenberg and I was asked by Dr. Dennis to talk about Merchants of Novigrad, a bi-weekly GWENT podcast that we launched last Saturday. So Dennis asked me to talk a little bit about the idea, how the concept came to life and how I basically made it happen. So basically I joined Team Rankstar not so long ago and I was looking for ways to prove myself useful. And I started writing articles, I started making videos, obviously I'm streaming, but I still thought that's not necessarily enough. So I was talking to Dennis and he told me that he watched my stream quite a few times and he thinks I'll be a great host for a talk show. At first, I completely discarded the idea because I thought, you know what, I don't really have the time to do that. I think that between streaming and writing articles and doing some other stuff for my own stream, I don't think I'll have enough time to take care of a podcast or a talk show or anything of that format. But after a while, I figured maybe if I get a couple of co-hosts, then it will be much easier, and potentially I could maybe even skip an episode or two in the meantime if I'm really busy. So I talked to Babyjosus, commonly known as BJ, and I talked to Villa, because these guys are already doing a co-op stream every single Saturday, and I presented them with the idea of doing a podcast. And they received it pretty well. They thought, okay, it's a really cool idea. It has a lot of potential, but we are not very widely known as streamers or as players. So we thought, okay, it's gonna be quite hard to get started, but this idea of doing a co-op podcast with these guys got me really stoked. So I started working on the visuals, I started working on everything podcast related. I spent a couple of days on it, and initially we thought, okay, the first episode is gonna be during the Challenger weekend, but then it seemed that our good friend Woody is also releasing his YouTube podcast the same weekend, and it was simply a bad timing because as members of the same team we would like to have an episode of a podcast every single week. So one week it will be us, it will be Merchants of Novigrad, and the other week it will be Woody with What's Up GWENT. So we actually had to reschedule for the last weekend, which was September the 7th, and it required us to speed things up a little bit. So I already had all the visuals in place, or at least most of them, but we had to start working on the promotion side of the podcast. So we created a Twitter account, I started to network a little bit more. I started to tell people about the podcast. I started to promote podcasts on my own stream. Babyjosus and Villa were doing the same. And when quite a few people already knew about the podcast and the first episode that was coming. We needed a guest, and the idea was, okay, this is our first episode. We don't really know how it's gonna work. We don't really know if we are made for it. So to avoid the podcast and the talk being very stale, we thought, okay, let's invite somebody who's very entertaining and who's widely known and commonly liked by the community. And we thought, okay, it's gonna be hard because nobody knows us, or like very few people know us. So how do we get somebody who is very popular to appear on our podcast? And recently, Biboboop joined Team Rankster as well. So I know that he already collaborated with Dennis on GWENT News. So I was like, let's ask Bibo. He's very entertaining. Everyone likes him. Everyone knows him. And the first episode is gonna be a little bit more lighthearted because we don't really wanna. We didn't really want the discussion to be very dark and grim. And of course, we were gonna talk about balance and the challenger and the meta, but we didn't want it to be very negative. We just wanted to keep the whole thing in a more positive tone. So that's why our choice was Bibo, and within half an hour he replied and he said, okay, that's fine, I'm gonna do it. It's an amazing idea. I love podcasts. So we already had the first guest. We had all the visuals. I had my co-hosts. We did some promo work, and that's how we got to the last Saturday. And you know, before the episode, we internally talked about this, and we agreed that if we get on average like 10 to 15 viewers, it's gonna be a success. Of course, we were hoping on a host or two, so maybe a couple more viewers. But we knew how it is on Twitch, so our expectations were that even if we get a big host from a popular streamer like Trynet, most of these viewers are gonna move on after a couple of minutes. But that's not what happened. When I checked our stats after the podcast, we averaged, I think, 120, 130 viewers. I was completely shocked. The first episode was amazing. Of course, there was a couple of things that we weren't quite happy about. We received a lot of feedback from fellow streamers, from viewers, who gave us a couple of good ideas on how to improve the podcast. But still, I loved it. I was very nervous when we started, but Bibo was an amazing guest. BJ and Villa were doing an amazing job as co-hosts. So it was pretty cool. Like, after maybe 20 minutes, I already felt like I got a firm grip on how a podcast like this should work. So we just went through the episode, and before we actually started streaming, I was like, yeah, okay, if we manage to talk for an hour, that's gonna be good. But we actually talked for a little bit more than 2 hours, and if Villa didn't have his own tournament to play on, we would probably go on for at least another hour or so. But yeah, I would say the first episode was very successful. It was an immense success from my perspective, because as I said, the expectations were pretty low. We didn't want to get overhyped, but things just went way better than expected. And on that hype wave, we actually thought, okay guys, the next episode is gonna be in 2 weeks. It's gonna be on September 21st or maybe 22nd, depends on if we get a guest, and if he or she is gonna be available on the 21st or 22nd. So I got this idea, okay guys, let's just get someone even bigger and even more entertaining than Bibo. It's gonna be hard because Bibo is one of the better content creators out there. Like, everyone likes him, and he's just a very positive guy, and that makes him an amazing guest for a podcast like this. And yeah, we actually approached somebody who is widely known, and somebody who is liked by essentially everyone, and somebody who everyone knows. And I was like, no way this guy is ever gonna agree to be on the podcast. But 20 minutes later, I received a message, and he said, you know what, I like podcasts. Podcasts are amazing, and September the 21st works just fine for me. So we can do it. I'll be on the show, guys. So guys, with that being said, and this is the first time we actually leak this information, I'd like to present you the guest of the next episode, which you probably know. Like, the odds are you know this guy already. So the next episode is gonna be on September 21st. We don't know what time, probably early afternoon Central European Summer Time, so I would say like 1 p.m, maybe a little bit before that. Kind of depends on when our guest is available exactly. But the guest of the second episode of Merchants of Novigrad is gonna be the one and only Pawel Burza. We are absolutely stoked. We are absolutely hyped to have him on the show. He said yes, and he promised us some cool stuff. So we can't wait, guys. We can't wait. It's gonna be absolutely amazing. And if you wanna stay in touch with us, if you wanna get some more information about Merchants of Novigrad, about our podcast, please follow us on Twitter at Novigrad Podcast. The episode is gonna be streamed live on my own channel, which is twitch.tv/Weissenberg, but it's also gonna be uploaded on my YouTube channel afterwards, so you can just go to YouTube and look for Weissenberg GWENT, and you'll find us as well. Well, I guess that's it for me. And yeah, guys, thank you for watching, and have fun watching the rest of this episode of GWENT News. I will see you guys on the podcast, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me right here, and I will see you guys later.
Weissenberg's part ends here, and let's go for Babyjosus.
Welcome everyone to a new deck guide for GWENT News. My name is Babyjosus. I am a official GWENT partner for CD Projekt Red. I am a streamer on Twitch for Team Rankstar, and since recently I also am a co-host for the new GWENT podcast called Merchants of Novigrad. Check us out on Twitter if you want to know more about it. Episode 2 is gonna be amazing. I'm not gonna tell you anything yet, but keep in touch and you will know eventually. But I'm here for my deck, and I made a Deadlift deck. So originally I tried to make a Deadlift deck with vampires alone, but I realized it's not that great. It's not the way to go, and you have to play other cards in order to win games. So when I was talking with some of my team members from TRS, we came to the conclusion that you have to play the Tribe package, and you have to play some of the big boys together with the vampires to make it a strong deck. So that's what I did. I put some cards together and I came up with the following list. It runs Old Spirited Asleep, Goliath, those are the big boys. We run Osriel because of that, because we want to eat one of them. I prefer to eat Goliath because Goliath has the Death Wish ability, so I prefer to play him round 1 or round 2 and not in the last round. For example, you will kind of want to avoid that scenario when Vilgefortz is gonna... Your opponent is gonna use an aggressive Vilgefortz on your Goliath and he gets the Tibor out of the deck by doing that. We don't want that, so we want to play Goliath in round 1 or round 2. So then we have Ozzy enabled. Trinet came up with the idea to play Dandelion, Poet and Naglafar, and I really like that idea. Because if you play Naglafar, it puts a gold card on the top of the deck and you always draw a gold card with Dandelion. But you can also play Dandelion together with Tribe units, because by playing Dandelion after having some Tribe units on the board, you trigger them twice, because you also play a card from hand, remember? So that's pretty good. Katagan is just for Tribe, and Vampires for Oriana. Oriana is the main card of the deck. If you use your leader charges, and you use, for example, Queen of the Night, you put 4 bleeding on 4 units. Then you play Oriana, you put bleeding on 1 unit, and you have 5 units with bleeding. That means that Oriana will boost by 5 at the end of the turn, as long as you play Oriana on the range row, keep that in mind. So it's always a 9 for 9 in that case. But of course they can remove it or they move it to the other row. But if they don't do that, Oriana will be a lot of points. You can keep giving bleeding to units because we are running Necrots, we are running Plummers, we are running Cutthroat and Burza. So we have a lot of ways to put the bleeding on the opponent's units. Aside of that, we're running Protoflatter. Protoflatter is pretty good, especially with the big boy package. It's easy to trigger the dominance, so it's a 10 for 9 most often, but it's also a little bit of removal, which the deck lacks. Also, I already mentioned, we run Summoning Circle, and we're running 11 for proficient bronzes, so we have a lot of targets for Summoning Circle. What you can do is play a Plummet from hand and play a Plummet from Summoning Circle and trigger the Bonded. You can also play a Necker from Summoning Circle and then play Dandelion. You can play a Garcane from hand and a Garcane from Summoning Circle and have 2 engines on the board by doing that. So the Summoning Circle is really good in this deck, and there's not a lot of artifact removal. You do have Karate Heatwave and Yennefer Invocation, but I think that's a decent trade if they play it on the Summoning Circle and not on the Oriana. Queen of the Night is a very flexible card. It can put bleeding on an opponent's unit, but it can also purify units. For example, if they play Poison on Goliath or they play Bounty on Goliath, you can purify it and your opponent will have a hard time. Gael is pretty decent, can kill a unit. If you play it on a veteran from Skellige, it's a 15 for 7, which is quite bonkers. It's not too easy to do that, but it can happen. So we have 2 Necrods who are basically 2 bronze engines. If you play Vampires, it reduces the cooldown by 1 and you can play bleeding on your opponent's units. Pretty good with Oriana. If you're a blue coin, you generally play 1 and you use TA on it. If you are on red coin, you can play them out, but it's very likely they're gonna get removed. But it's still 5 for 5, which is not bad. We have 2 Necker Warriors. We have Garcanes, who boost by 1 whenever a unit has bleeding from your opponent. 2 Plummets. 1 Cutthroat is basically a filler, but I think it's the best filler because it gives bleeding. 2 Burzas, which have Thrive and can give bleeding, and 2 Neckers. So that's basically the deck, and I started playing this deck at rank 5, but rank 1 quite fast. Then I stopped playing the deck and I tried some other decks. But I still think the deck is pretty decent. You can play a different variation of the deck, but I like this version. So I hope you're gonna enjoy the deck. There will be a link in the description, so you can import the deck list into your Gwent, and so you can have some fun playing some Gwent. Yeah, good luck, and see you next time.
This is it for Gwent News, and see you next time.